So in my last video, we talked about how to play the prototype for the board game Drum Major. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the game and some of the key design decisions that have been made up to this point to get it to where we're at today. The inspiration for this game really came from my children. I have 6 kids and they've all been involved in music and the marching band throughout their schooling. I have 2 trumpet players in my house, 2 trombone players, and 2 tuba players. I also have a son who was a drum major. One of my kids played in the drum and bugle corps at the Air Force Academy. Another one is involved in orchestra at Gannon. So music has been a big part of our life. And I just really like the theme of music in board games. In terms of the mechanics for the games, I teach a lot of new people, a lot of non-gamers games. And so I'm always looking for games that will sort of open their eyes to what possibilities there are in gaming, things that are new to them that they may not have ever seen if they were just playing traditional games like Monopoly or Risk or Scrabble, but things that are still approachable and easy to understand. One of the games, so what I'm always looking for are mechanics that I really like in games, but that might be a little too difficult for new beginners to understand, or especially with kids. I also play a lot of games with kids. And so one of the games that I really like mechanically is a game called Role Player that was an inspiration for this game. And this is where the dice drafting mechanic came from in Drum Major. I really like the way they do it in Role Player, but there's a lot of dice manipulation in this game that is a little too complex for beginners. If you look at Role Player on BGG, the complexity rating on there, which you always have to take with a grain of salt, is 2.45, which just shows that it's a little bit too complicated for a beginner. So I wanted to take that dice mechanism where you're drafting dice and you're sort of adding them up to contribute to something. You're building something, but to sort of simplify it in a way so that it's not too hard for beginners to understand. The other game that I really like mechanically that I borrowed from is Sansushi. And in this game, the thing that I like is that you have a deck of cards and every single player has the same deck of cards. So throughout the game, you're going to play all the same actions. You're just going to play them in a different order, and you have to tactically react to the order that they show up in your deck. And so those are the 2 main mechanics that I borrowed or that I adopted for Drum Major. And one of the main things I'm trying to do with this game is to make it very approachable. I love games like Ticket to Ride, games that are easy to teach and that pretty much anybody can play. But they're interesting enough that even a seasoned gamer will want to play them over and over. And so that's really been my focus in designing this prototype, is to create something that's approachable for people, but also complex enough to make it interesting and ties to the theme. One of the big things that I've focused on is integrating the theme with the mechanics so that it's easy to teach, because I find that games that do that, that have that better integration of theme and mechanics, are so much easier to teach because the actions that you're taking just make sense to people. So when I first started out with the prototype and we got it to the table, we found that it leaned a little bit to the simple side. It was too basic. There wasn't enough interesting decisions. So one of the things that was added were the director's objectives cards. And the inspiration for this is really kind of comes from Wingspan, where you get those long-term goals and objectives that you're trying to achieve. And in Wingspan, there's one for each card, but you can accumulate multiples throughout the game. In Drum Major, there's only one card that you're going to have. Your band director is giving you certain goals and objectives they want you to achieve, but there's going to be 3 of them. So you have multiple objectives, but it's only on one card. And that has worked really well in terms of adding a little more spice to the game, adding a little bit more to think about to give players something to try to go for, other than just the basic simple things of building your band and putting on a good musical performance. One thing that we had at the beginning that we ended up taking out of the game was an action called Gain Insight. And what we did early on was the judges were hidden objectives in this game. So there were judges on the judging stand that had sort of their own secret motivations for things they were looking for out of the bands, but you didn't necessarily know what those were. And so you would have to take an action called Gain Insight if you wanted to peek at those cards and look at what those judges were going for. So say a judge wanted, they were a fan of percussion and they were going to give out points for the most percussion. You didn't necessarily know that, but if you played Gain Insight, you could gain insight into what that judge was looking for. You could take a peek at it and then put it back under. So you may have other information that other players don't have. Now, you could take your chances and not play any Gain Insight actions the whole game. Maybe try to decipher, but based on the actions of the other players and what they're doing, after they've looked at that card, you might be able to figure out what the judges are looking for, or you might just press your luck and take a shot and hope that things work out for the best. The thing that we noticed was that was a little bit too much for the non-gamers or the family gamers. Because you had your director's objectives, you had the main things you're trying to go for in the game. When you layered on that extra level, it became a little bit too complicated, and it was too much for cognitive demand for people, too many things for them to keep track of and think about. So we simplified that, and what we did is we went down from 3 random judges each game to 2, and we made those public goals instead of making them private, hidden goals. And that has helped a lot. One of the side benefits of that is it increases player interaction, because now if that judge is looking for the most percussion, everybody at the table knows that, and we're all competing to meet that goal. So it sort of had that side bonus of increase in player interaction by making those public goals instead of hidden goals. Couple other tweaks that we made to increase player interaction. One of the things we noticed early on in the play test was that there wasn't a lot of action going on the board. Players would be building up their bands, they were doing their music practice, trying to collect those music notes, but there wasn't much going on with the parade lineup. So we made a few tweaks to adjust that. One of the things we did was we gave more points, or more units in the parade got points for being adjacent to them. So there's a little more interesting things going on in the parade. One of the other things we did is we added the card, just sort of realize if you want more action on the board, one thing you can do is to force that action to happen. And so each player now has a card in their deck where there's really only 2 actions: adjust the lineup and move your band. And so you have to take an action on the board. And so each player, even if that's not a priority for them, the parade lineup, at some point in the game, they're going to do something on the board, and they're going to have an action that involves the parade lineup. So that really helped a lot, because it seemed like as soon as you start to get a little bit of action on the board, other players pick up on that, and then it increases. And so just making that one tweak where you create a card that basically forces a player to take an action on the board has helped a lot. Another tweak that we made involved the claim a band and try it again actions. One of the things that we noticed in the play test was people were reluctant to claim a band early in the game, because once you got out on the board, other people would start to manipulate the parade lineup and stick you behind the horses and put fire trucks around you and start giving you negative points. And I guess a short aside, there's not a lot of that in this game, and that was intentional on purpose, because what we've found in the years of experience with our kids being in band is that marching bands tend to be friendly. There's not a lot of take that. There's not a lot of sort of negativity or competition. Now, in this game, you're competing to be the best band, but you're not doing it in sort of an underhanded, dirty way. So there's not a lot of that in the game, and we purposely have tried to keep too much of that out, all right? But we noticed that people were reluctant to claim a band early in the parade, and everybody would wait till the end, which, again, decreased the amount of action on the board. The other thing that we noticed was the try it again action. There's only one of these in each deck, And really, it didn't make any sense to play this early in the game, because what the try it again action lets you do is pick from your discard pile and play any action in the discard pile. Well, when you had this come up as an option, all you would do is continue to bury it in your deck and basically wait until you'd never play it except for the last turn of the game, because then your discard pile is at its maximum extent. You can play any action in there. So there was really never any incentive to try it again earlier than the last turn of the game. So what we did is we've added a bonus die that incentivizes using these earlier in the game. The first person to claim a band and the first person to play the try it again card will get to roll bonus die, and they may be able to recruit an extra members. They may be able to do some extra music practice or get some extra style depending on what they roll with that die, but it gives them a bonus and provides incentive to play these cards earlier in the game. Now, subsequent players who play these actions will get to roll one bonus die, but the person who does it last gets nothing. So again, that's just a minor tweak, but it increased player interaction and made those cards more palatable early in the game. So far we've done 24 play tests at all 4 different player counts, and we feel like the prototype's in a really good position. People have been able to pick up the game easily and understand it. They're having a good time playing it. The next short video I'm going to make is focused on decisions that still need to be made and things related to getting this to a published state that really could have a huge impact on sort of the look and feel and play of Drum Major. So I hope you take a look at that, and if you have any questions, let me know.